And we'll take cue from what you have just concluded and go to the panelists for today, Vimal ji and Ashish ji. Good morning, sir, and welcome again. And before that, so congratulations on completing the tenure, a very successful tenure. And congratulations, Sunil sir, for starting the new journey. I am sure you will be going to take IEEMA further from where sir has brought it. Sir, just taking cue from what the President just mentioned, we have seen that India and the global power sector has been going through a lot of disruptions, a lot of changes over the past decade or so. We have seen most of those disruptions have stabilized, which means there are not many new things coming in, but the ripple effects of that is now at its peak when we see our sector as a whole or the overall global power sector. While new things are not coming in, but how to the industry settle in across the value chain is a major challenge. With that, Vimalji, I would want your thoughts on how we have seen the sector change over the years and what you are seeing in the future happen.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think let me start with what's happening on the projects, on the business. First of all, I don't think, and I've been in this industry now for 22 years, I don't think we have seen such good times as what we have today. Okay, number one. Number two, with the focus on renewables, the projects are becoming much more complex. Whether you want to call it load balancing or whether you want to call it the amount of power which has to be transmitted. The projects are becoming much more complex, much more bigger. I still remember when I joined, the first project which I was doing was a 50 crore project to be done over 42 months. Last year we got a project from Power Grid, 900 crores to be done in 15 months. So I think that's what is changing, and that's where I think we need to be prepared for that, saying if we need to meet the demand and what Mr. Hamza said about 10% growth and 500 billion investment, somewhere we'll all have to gear up, saying how are we ready for these large changes which are happening in the industry, which is a very large opportunity for us. Secondly, what Charu talked about on the emphasis on quality. I think we are clearly seeing a major change, major shift in all the customers on how do you maintain quality. And that's to me a very big thing which is happening. Third is on, as I said, it's changing to 13 months, 15 months, large projects. How do we gear up ourselves to do fast-track project execution? Whether it is mechanization, whether it is automation, whether it is the use of AI and all that, and maybe I'll talk about it a little bit later on. But clearly we can see that we need to do a lot more than what we are doing to meet this great opportunity which is there, which has come after a long time. And I think with what the Prime Minister has been talking about, 500 gigawatts of renewable, and also I think the increased demand of power. I can tell you one thing, in the last 1 year, we have done 3 projects to bring more power to the city of Mumbai. None of them is to deal with renewables. That's the sort of demand increase also, which we are seeing. And now once the new metro commissions, I'm very clear that there will be a further requirement. We are already discussing some more projects too. I'm talking about one single city. So that's the sort of opportunity, I think, which we have. And we'll have to change with it. Otherwise, we'll be left behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And I agree with the point that you're saying about the project timelines. Even we feel that what Charu ma'am used to ask us to complete in 3 months is now being asked to be done in 1 month. So that we are also feeling the heat equally. Just going ahead, sir, with what we talked about on the trends, what do you think would be the top 3 game changers if you look at now and in the next 2-3 years? How do you see, I mean, those 3 things that would, shape our sector, shape the industry where we are working on?
So there are quite a few things which are happening. I think a couple of things I covered up front. One is the size of the project and all that. I think second is the use of digital, IoT, etc. I think which we need to really look at it as to what all we can do to fast track, to make larger projects and all that. I'll give a simple example. We do a foundation design for a tower. And typically it will take you 10 days, 15 days for a design, and you will come up with 4 or 5, and then you'll say it's not good, then you'll again go back and, it will take a month and all that. Then we used AI and we developed an app. Now, with all the data which you have mined, with all whatever work we have done, at a click of a button, once you put in data, you get 500 foundation designs. Okay, so it's cut down the timelines. It's also made it much more efficient because you can give the best design, best cost to the client. So I think to me, the entire use of digital, or let's say machine learning and all that, we used to see that we were making mistakes in tenders. And what used to happen, tenders, in one page, one spec is given, some other page, some other spec is given. And if you have not read it properly, you've had it. Now with the use of machine learning and all that, you can pick up saying, oh, that there is a difference here. Which one is there? So I think the use of this is going to be very useful for us in terms of how do we meet the requirements of the larger projects and all that. Second to me is, I think there are great opportunities which are coming up, especially for the industry like, let's say, offshore wind. We are not ready for it. I think we need to be ready for it, but it's a matter of time that will become a big business. I think yesterday or day before, government has released guidelines on VGF, etc. on this. So it's a matter of time that also becomes a big business. Then I think the interconnection between India, UAE, Saudi, Europe and all that is finally somewhere, it's taking shape. Some, reports are getting prepared and all that. How are we all getting ready for that? That could be, and those will require very different technologies, very different ways of execution. How do you, get ready for that? The third, I think, big game changer is going to be the shortage of labor. I think today, almost all of us are suffering from large shortage of labor. A little bit less probably in our industry. I also have a civil business and, out of 30,000 people, 10,000 people short. So that sort of shortages we are running into. So, and we are not seeing a long-term solution to it from the availability of labor. So obviously we'll have to change the way we are doing our projects. What all can we do? How do we mechanize? How do we automate? How do we do precasting? Like we started doing crane erection for towers. We have never done that in India, although we were always doing it in Saudi and Middle East and all that. So I think a lot of changes will have to happen in the way projects are getting executed. The second piece on that is on the cost related to that. You will first, earlier you used to put workers in, let's say, tents and do all these things. People are not ready to come for that. We quoted recently a project for a Swedish multinational in India. And the cost, the specs which they gave for labor, the cost of that was virtually same as what the main plant would have cost. So I think that's something, it's a very big game changer which is happening. In fact, we are in very active dialogue with Power Grid also on that, because Power Grid has been coming back to us saying, why don't you provide better facilities? I said, we are happy to provide, but I think we need to have put them in the specs. Otherwise, one company will do, one will not do. I think it's a matter of time that all that will come into it. So we'll also have to see today for us, if you look at a cost of, and since I do more transmission lines, cost of labor for us in transmission line will be 10, 15, maybe 20%. We are supplying material towers to US, where the cost of execution is 70%, 80%. That's because of the labor cost. And I think it's a matter of time it will start catching up. So to me, that will be a very big game changer, saying how do we improve productivity, how do we mechanize better, how do we give better facilities to our workers so that they can come and work with us. I think these are a few things which I would like to cover.
I'll quickly move on to Vimalji. Vimalji, let's talk about Government of India's agenda of going global, and none better than you, who has footprints in more than 100 countries, been there, done that successfully. So the people who are sitting here, I think it would be good to know how to plan a successful global market entry and how to sustain that, sir. That would be a great input from you, sir.
So I think to me, what is critical is to have a global mindset. You cannot have one standard for exports, one standard for local. I think that is the biggest issue which we are seeing. But export ka maal isko acha banana hai. I think that trend has to get out of our minds. There has to be a single gold standard, whether you do for India or you do. I think that is the biggest thing which will take you to where we want to be. To me, I have always been talking about 3 C's for a successful global venture. One has been cost. Saying how do you remain cost competitive? Okay, how do you work on reducing your costs consistently so that you can offer a competitive product? See, one of our biggest competitors is always China. which has always been talked about as a low cost. So I think that's one thing which you have to work on, saying how do I consistently keep my cost down. Second thing which we have very clearly focused on is consistency of quality. You cannot have one batch going well, the second batch having some other issues and all that. So to me, consistency becomes very critical if you really want to be successful globally. And the third C to me is commitment. How do you stick to your commitment? Whether it is commitment to quality, whether it is commitment to delivery, whether it's commitment to sustainability, commitment to price, saying, "Aaj daam badh gaya, to mera daam badha diya." Then that buyer will never come back, and then he will badmouth you across the entire country. Sustainability is something where it's becoming, as you were talking about, it's becoming very, very important. And I'll give a simple example. As part of the IRA, we got some orders for exporting transmission towers to the US. And US being what it is, they said we don't want shining towers. Otherwise, we like to have shining towers. They said we need to have a dull tower. And we typically used to use a solution. They said, "Nahi, aajkal wo nahi chalega, because that is not environment friendly. So you need to develop a new solution which is environment friendly. We want exactly this shade of color. But that's the color which is there in that particular county or state and all that." It took us 6 months to develop that particular thing, because he said, "I want exactly that. I don't want anything beyond that." So I'm just saying that, and now that we did it, we have already started getting a lot of orders from other people who have seen that and saying, "This is what is done." So I think if you really want to be successful, I think these are all very critical for us. It's not a one-off shot that, ek order le liya, paisa kama liya, then, we'll see what to be done. It's not something which will make money in your first order. Okay. It's not something where you can milk it easily. I think we need to be consistent in what we want to do. And I think quality is the biggest thing. Sustainability is becoming very, very important. Like I'm telling you today, when you export to Australia, one speck of mud in the container gets you a fine of $25,000. Okay. So, what happens, Ashish, is, we wash the container from inside before loading anything. Can you imagine? I don't think I've seen anyone else washing a container before loading anything. So I think you'll have to adapt yourself to the requirements of what the customer wants and consistently follow it. Now that we learned that, now we wash for everyone. So how do you apply your export standards or gold standards to everything else? I think that is the most critical piece which will make you successful. Secondly, I think as a senior person in the industry, we have also been taking a lot of efforts to take all our partners to the global market. I know there are a lot of people sitting here whom we have taken to the international market. Because we said that, no, we want to have dependent supply chain people. So that's another piece where, how do you work with across the organization, across the country, across this, to make them also successful. And I think we have done it very well, and we are still happy. A lot of people still come to us and we say, "We are happy to take you there." I think that again is very critical, that, that entire value chain system gets developed. Especially in today's scenario when supply chain is a very big constraint. How do you deal, how do you keep relationship with your supplier like you have with your client? I think that is also very critical, especially for the global market. Because for a global market to get approval for sub-vendors and all that becomes very critical. How do you treat them? How do you be fair to them? Again, becomes very important part for your global peace. That's all.
So one follow-up question. When you talked about India versus China, and you must have competed with Chinese manufacturers across various global tenders, anything specific that you see that is a learning for us here?
So to me, we compete with China or Chinese players virtually everywhere. We are there in Far East, where they are very big. They are in Africa. Middle East, they are not there that much, but they are still there. Okay. We never try to compete with them on cost, because you cannot compete with them on cost. Not because they are cheaper, but we do not know what subsidies they get, what export benefits they are getting, what are they doing, so we never look at that piece. I think again we come back to the same thing, saying what is your commitment? Are you committing that I will give it on time? Or are you committing that I will continue to supply at this price? You know, like in COVID, I still remember we were supplying to US. The freight rate went up from $500 to $4,000 per container. And we still continue to supply. And the guys came back and told us both Turkish and Chinese have refused to supply. And because of which we got a repeat order. So I think China has got its own capability. They've got the capability on financing. And I think that's one issue which, Charu, we should take up with the minister, saying when he's talking about commerce and, somewhere the backing of finance is required. So the Chinese beat you on that part of it, where they are able to give more credit, they are able to give you more this and all that. But I don't think we are worried about the cost part of it.
Thank you so much, sir. It was really nice interacting. I think what Vimal sir talked about going global and focusing on the 3 C's and the inputs that you've given on the newer area, especially focusing on sustainability, is very great. We are almost at the end of the time that has been allocated to us.